All right, it is 3:01. Let's call the meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Please silence your cell phones and let's call roll.
All right, George McQuistion.
Here.
Jeff Struble.
Here.
Betsy Brunstetter. Lisa Cronister. Here. Brian Fitzsimmons. Matt Guillory. Long Nguyen. John Robertson. You have quorum.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Item 2A, approval of the minutes. If there are no questions or comments about the minutes, we will consider them approved by unanimous consent. And 3A, cases withdrawn, 2923 North Walker. Michael, did you just want to give a little quick summary about this?
You may remember this application from last fall. It was a lady that had a house there, Clapboard Wood House, at the corner of 29th and Walker, and she was proposing to replace all the wood siding with brick and put a vinyl fence around the outside, replacing the chain link fence that's already there. And as you may recall, the commission had quite a bit of concern with the historic authenticity of trying to replace the clapboard with brick, and also some structural issues with whether or not the brick that as they proposed it would adhere to the building and stand up. So the matter was continued once and then continued again to this meeting, and had recent contact with the applicant on the case, and they basically have indicated to me that they're not prepared at this point in time to proceed financially with that project, and they may come back in about a year or so with a different idea, a different design, but at this time they're withdrawing the case.
Excellent, thank you. 6A, cases for individual consideration, 804 Northwest 8th Street.
Yes, this is an application that involves the demolition of two structures, one at 804 Northwest 8th Street, and the second at 815 and a half North Shortell. They are on adjacent parcels that are located at the corner of the southwest corner of Northwest 8th and Shortell. We've prepared a staff report for your consideration, and due to the fact that both of the structures were identified in the intensive level survey phase 3 as warranting further study for consideration as part of a historic district, that we identified that for you in the staff report, and also described the provisions of the code that apply to this kind of situation, and how the Commission's determination as to whether or not the structures are significant to the history of the state, nation, or district plays into whether or not the application for demolition should be approved. We've also described in the staff report for you and provided you some attachments that were given to us by the applicant that give us a little bit of an insight to the interior structural integrity and other issues that plague both of these structures in terms of making them quite difficult to retain and try and rehabilitate. And so we've concluded that the Commission should make a determination that whether or not either of these structures is historically significant and worthy of further study, or should go ahead and be demolished at this time. In addition, the application does propose some other improvements on site, but we didn't have any issues identified with any of those provisions, so we're prepared to recommend approval of the project should the Commission decide that the structures are not historically significant.
Okay, thank you. And you also did give us forward a letter from Randy Floyd.
Yes, I'm sorry. We did receive a letter on Monday from Randy Floyd that expressed a variety of concerns with the project from the standpoint of not having adequate detail available to the Commission for some of the aspects related to the retaining wall, materials, and so on and so forth. And we followed that up with a separate email to the Commission that provided some other details that we did have on hand for that case, but did not include in the packet. They do provide a little bit more insight into the design of that retaining wall, but the applicant is present to talk to you about any questions you may have about the materials being used or proposed, and can also discuss some of the aspects of the proposed parking in terms of whether the retaining wall needs to be engineered and whether the parking all needs to be put in at this time or can be split out and done in a phased manner. So,
Okay, terrific. I don't know if there are questions or comments. There probably are. I don't know if it might make sense to take a look at this in two parts. One, the demolition piece, and then separately the site improvement piece. If anyone has if that's acceptable, let's do that. If anybody has any objections, please let me know. Did the applicants want to talk about the demolition at all and respond to the staff report?
I'm Kelly Smith. I'm representing the clients. We had looked. They bought the building 800 there on the corner on Chartel. That building was able to be renovated. So we've basically brought it all up to code. We kept everything exactly the way it is, just made it better. When looking at the two structures, there's a blue building behind there that's 815.5. It and as well as the structure just to the west of the 800 building. They looked at rehabilitating both of those. However, there was extensive termite damage, wood rot. The foundation had shifted extensively, and the utility lines as well have collapsed to both structures. So to rehabilitate that, we would almost have to knock it down and just build it back the way it was. The plan for the future is to, on the 804 property, build another structure, another multifamily structure. The blue structure that's behind 800 to the south, we were planning just to remove that. With the apartment buildings, there are 8 units, and we wanted to make sure that those units had parking. The client also owns the existing parking lot that's to the south of 800. They were going to use that for parking anyway. To make sure that there was enough parking for the both structures of 800 as well as the future structure, we were just going to not change any grade, just push that existing retaining wall that's falling apart as well with where the structure is, push it in a bit to be able to create parking there as well as parking on the other side. The other lot is only 40 by 120, so it's not long enough to really put a building on unless you're going to do something fairly skinny there with adequate parking. So they had planned on using that, continuing to use that as parking as well as created another row of parking to be able to facilitate both buildings that they plan on creating and updating and keeping tenants in. So it kept parking off the street, and they're planning on landscaping extensively, fencing and retaining walls. We had proposed the retaining walls match the existing brick of 800. We're trying to stick with the same era as the building there on the corner. Everything that we do, we try to tie into that building in that area. But if I know that there's a lot of other retaining walls around that neighborhood that if the council prefers it be a concrete instead of, a engineered stack block or something like that, we're open to that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience who wanted to speak about this case, specifically the demolition part of it at this stage?
Well, I haven't known the police department south of it.
Pardon me? Right.
I own the property just south on the south side of the parking lot, and I'm in approval of that building being taken out. It's terrible.
Okay.
I mean, it looks more of a hazard for any reason. So
Okay.
I'm just in approval of it.
Okay.
My only question, I guess, is when they put up the parking lot, what type of fencing would they use? And that would be the only question I'd have.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask you to state your name?
My name is Marlis Hakim.
Okay.
You want me to sign in?
Thank you.
Okay.
And can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead, Betsy.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you specifically, when you were talking about the hazard, was it the blue building or?
Yeah, the blue building. And the little white building, actually, we looked at it sometime back to purchase, and it was in such bad repair that we passed on it. So it is not in good condition either.
Do any of the commissioners, just focusing on items A1, the demolition of the 2 existing structures, does anyone have any comments or questions or motions about those?
I have a question. I don't know that I'm have that much concern. I have been inside the 804 in the past as well, and there are some serious issues in there. I've never been inside the blue building, but I am curious about the upper portion. Definitely looks like it probably has some issues, but is there a way to utilize the concrete foundation, which is the existing garage within the plan, which somehow would also tie into the overall site planning? I'm curious if that had been considered or looked at.
We had kind of looked at that. Originally, when they bought both properties, they were wanting to actually knock that building down and create another building, a smaller duplex of sorts behind there. When we looked into the structure of the not necessarily the south part of the structure, but the interior part that holds everything back, the retaining wall area, it's extensively damaged. And so when we had priced it out to be able to renovate, and it was just excessive. So that's when the clients decided, well, let's look at the properties overall and see how we can make it better instead of just trying to put a Band-Aid on it.
Betsy?
On demolition, I've been looking at that blue building for a while, and it is on our, whatever that resources survey, and that was the reason the survey kind of was a little questionable in my mind, because that building is obviously not in great shape. And Brian's word on the 804 building is probably good enough for me on that. I was going to see if I could go see inside of it, but that was my only question. Could I go ahead and make a motion on that?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we approve the demolition of both of those buildings.
Do I have a second? Okay, that's Brinstetter and Robinson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item A1, A, and B is approved. And now in terms of the site improvements, and we've already gotten to those a bit. Were there any questions about those from the commission regarding the site improvements? That would be from A2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down.
I'm kind of interested in the construction of the retaining wall. We don't really know how high it's going to be. I understand that they're going to step it back if it's greater than 4 feet. And that goes around that area where they're going to be parking. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. The existing, again, we weren't going to change the existing grade. We had looked at just cutting it back for the parking. And so when we take out the existing retaining wall, which is cracked and failing anyway, our plan was to use the engineered block to wrap it around, and then once it hit 4 feet, step it back and do it as well, just to meet the existing grade. So we weren't going to change any of the grading.
Okay. Well, have you had somebody, have you had some professional help with that?
We haven't had a survey done yet.
No, I meant with the structure of the retaining wall.
Yes, we have. Well, we have structural details for that. Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Done by an architect or an engineer
yes.
or something like that. Okay. That's all.
How do we feel about, in Randy Floyd's letter, she mentioned the issue of the 804 parcel would there's nothing planned for that right yet, at least nothing before us right now. However, these plans ask to continue the parking lot at the rear of the 804 parcel. And the question was, if in fact for some reason 804 doesn't become developed, does that having parking at the rear somehow interfere with its viability as a lot in the cottage district going forward?
Well, I actually probably would agree with that sentiment. If I'm reading this correctly, you're proposing 20, how many parking spaces?
18.
18 parking spaces. You have a 8 duplex or apartment building. Are those 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms?
They are, there's 6 1-bedrooms and 2 bedrooms upstairs.
Okay. So doing math, it's 4 plus. So that would infer even if there's not any required parking in this area
Right.
per se, but even if you were going by standards in other areas of the city, the amount of parking spaces proposed here is actually overparked
Yes,
based on what's there.
right.
And so there is pause for concern of making a lot of parking unnecessarily.
Absolutely.
and
And
making
the only reason we planned for it this far ahead is that we want to put a multifamily on the other side as well. If we were not allowed to do this much parking, it would kind of dictate whether we do a duplex or a quadplex possibly on that lot. And so that's we just wanted to plan for the best case scenario. If we could take that whole thing and be able to use that for parking, then we'd be able to do that. That way our tenants and our guests didn't have to necessarily park on the street.
Well, what about, for the sake of argument, not doing anything with the 804 parcel right now, and then if and when you decide whether you want to build a
Sure, we
fourplex
can
or
do that.
duplex, then bring the parking plan in, and you don't know, you might even want, you might need less parking, you might want more parking. It's just.
And we're definitely open to that. It was just something, when we talked about demolishing the blue structure, we kind of looked at the overall plan after that and said, as a master plan, how do we want to lay this out? And so we thought we would propose that. If anyone would prefer us to wait on that lot, that's definitely acceptable on our end at least.
Okay. Were there any other questions about any other of the...
And then the only other concern I have is we don't have any details on the plantings and screening, and we're removing a building, whether it's in good shape or you like it or not, we're removing a building which does a good job of lining the street. Now we're creating a 70-foot gap between a retaining wall and the next fence, where what we will see is the side of a wooden dumpster, and that's about it.
And we have a landscape plan, I think, that was submitted somewhere. It's with the proposed site plan. It kind of gives a layout of where we plan on putting trees and
If I'm reading it correctly, it's showing
yeah.
screening, all of that with fountain grasses only.
Some of it's fountain grass. We actually have multiple plants there. It's hard to tell because the layers didn't print well.
Which are seasonal,
Yes.
and so in the wintertime it will not look good.
And we can definitely, I mean, if that's your concern, we can definitely beef that up some more there at the parking lot. Is that where your concern is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely screening parking is
We can do.
part of.
I was going to say
part
we
of
can
the
do
code, so.
knockout roses or something that continues to stay large during the winter season if that's the concern.
Does this meet, Michael, the percentage of evergreen requirements and that sort of thing with the parking lots?
Yes.
On the last question. On the side of the dumpster, the east-facing side, could that be brick as well?
We have it as lap siding to enclose the dumpster.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, we asked that they don't part of it, and they're okay to that. Do we not need a continuation or a revision to understand what that will actually look like?
Or we could just, Michael, I'll turn to you, but one thought is it's just the current plan minus that piece that's on 804.
Yeah,
Along
you
the
could,
property line?
you could make a motion that would modify item 2A, which is the parking lot on the north side of the alley, to change that from 9 stalls to, I believe, 4. Because in this area of the plan right here to the left of the stairway that's being built, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stalls in that location. So you could modify, like I said, to item 2A to allow only 4 parking stalls and specify that they be located behind 800 Northwest 8th Street. I'm not sure what your desires would be with respect to what they would do with this area at the back of 804. In the meantime, do you want them to build a retaining wall that goes out to the alley and then across the back? Or do you want to have them leave it natural?
That's why I'm curious about what the revision would be, how that would be handled. And
I mean, as of right now, there's a retaining wall that holds 804 up from the alleyway. It's not I don't see it as an issue to take the retaining wall from the stairway that we have right there to that and just not touch that existing. I don't know that we would create a new one and then have to take it down and push it back. But to hold the side back, obviously where we're cutting back, we could definitely do that.
And then, as far as on the couple of minor things, on the east side of the south parcel, there's no fence there, and that's adjacent to another piece of residential property. Is there intended to be a fence there?
We have it drawn currently to have a fence. They are in talking to them. That's their property behind. They do not have an alleyway behind them. So the house on the corner would be able to access their house, but the house inside of that doesn't have access to their garage. I know my clients have talked to them about possibly allowing them to use our parking lot to be able to access their property because they don't have a way to get there. So we have proposed a fence for this reason. That's what we'd like to do unless he goes into agreements with them. I know that's a kind of wishy-washy thing. I just if we don't consider them, then yes, there will be a fence back there.
Can I ask a question? Would it put you in any kind of problem to come back next month with a revised parking plan? Because one of the things we don't have is an indication as to where the fence is.
Sure.
And that would be really helpful.
Yes, the double line back there where they would actually pull up to.
Your rendering makes it look like it's on like the property line.
Yes. Okay. I know. I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
That would be super helpful. And also, I did not follow. Sorry, not a big plant person, even though I love them. Are there any plants? They all seem like they're really low plants along Chartel and screening the parking lot. Are there any plants that would have some height that would screen them?
We can do crepe myrtles, things like that. If it's the height that you guys would prefer on those ends,
I think
then
it
that's
would
fine.
be. I think it would be make it nicer to screen you. I mean, I think for your
Sure.
value also nicer to screen
Absolutely.
the cars.
We can
a bit.
definitely change that.
Yeah, but something dense, ideally. And this probably relates more to your neighbors on the south, but there's also rules about shielding headlights and such to adjacent residential properties.
Right.
I'm not sure if this does that or not, but
The fence itself that we proposed is approximately 4.5, almost 5 feet tall, so it should screen from any headlights going into there.
But it's wrought iron, though, right?
It's brick and wrought iron,
Okay.
so yes.
I think that should be verified. There are specific rules about opacity of screening headlights.
Right.
Can I make a motion for continuance to the next meeting? So you have an opportunity
Sure.
to. George, is there?
Well, yeah, there are two other issues I want to make sure we touched on. Brian mentioned the siding of the dumpster enclosure facing Chartel, and we kind of touched on that. I didn't know if that was getting any traction or where we were going with that. I just wanted to make sure we talked about that. And then second, I wanted to talk a little bit about the engineered block versus poured concrete retaining wall, and how the architects on the commission felt about that. There seemed to be some flexibility on the part of the applicant there.
Absolutely.
What I would just say is I've seen some bad concrete retaining walls, and there are examples of actually across Red Andrews Park some nice smaller retaining walls that are brick-faced or block-faced. So I don't know where the architects were coming down on that issue.
Just maybe tell us what, or show us what the engineered block is.
Okay, I
Because
can do
there's
that.
100,000 styles
Absolutely.
of those.
Yeah, we didn't do the rounded ones, just the flat facade that looks like chipped stone, basically. It was a lot of it was too as a maintenance concern with a lot of the area around there. I know that the concrete ones, after time, heave at some of those places, and so I know with the engineered block, when we stack it back, it helps with the maintenance part. They don't have as much maintenance. So
this image is not accurate.
it's accurate. It's just that we didn't stack when we stacked back. Let's see. I only pushed it back 18 inches, which was the minimum that was required by the manufacturer.
Well, if you're talking about the engineered block that does that will have a canted
It will have
won't
it
have
will,
a vertical
yes.
face.
Yeah, it's just hard to tell on this SketchUp. I can draw a regular CAD drawing, and it'd probably show you better. I know in SketchUp when I go at a different angle, it doesn't look like it's the right depth.
I think it would be good to have
Okay.
at least depictions of the specific block
And
you're using and the
I'll
cross
give you the
section.
manufacturer as well, and you can see if that's.
Would you like to have a section as well through there?
It sounds like we need it.
Well, and it would be nice to have the engineered blocks recommended section as well, so that
Sure.
we just
Yeah.
have a good feel of what the expectations are.
Absolutely. It was just our proposal. That's what we would like to use. If you guys had said, "Oh no, you have to do concrete," then we were going to go a different route. So.
Yeah, I'm just confused. We see, and I know the limitations of SketchUp, but we see brick on the SketchUp, but not engineered block. But are you on the fences? Is the fences brick?
Yes.
And then
The
transitions
fences,
to
yes, they
engineered block.
they match the existing building of 800. Yes.
So then it's also understanding
Right.
color and
Sure.
texture and how they all relate to each other. Okay.
I just have one more question about the top of the wall. If it does get up to like 4 feet, there's I think where I'm anticipating where that's going to go, you might have a hazard there. So you might, are you putting a fence above that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there'll be a fence at the very top.
All right. And I guess what this does show is
It's
a
our-
cap plate
Yes.
that caps over, so for the engineered blocks, that would just cap over and the whole thing would be,
Yes.
okay. That's good.
Would the commission want the site plan to be revised when we come back in April to delete those stalls? That way it's cleaner.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Okay.
Betsy, I didn't know if you wanted to, given the ongoing discussion, it sounds like there might be more to include in the continuance. Did you want to take another go at your motion? Or 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 anybody else?
Sure, I'll try it. Well, actually, I was just thinking to ask for a continuance, considering all the things that we have asked you to look at and get more specific about the design of the dumpster enclosure, the location of the fence, the change that we requested at the 804 backyard. Anything else?
The landscaping.
Oh, design of the wall, the landscape. Just kind of the
evergreen
whole,
landscaping.
the whole package.
We can continue with the demo, though, correct? That one's okay.
Yep, that
We
part's
would-
been that
okay,
part has
we-
been
I
approved.
just was curious. So I could tell contractors, yeah, you can knock those down.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff just has alerted me that we have a question. So before we have any motions, sir, did you want to come up and?
Dr. Baez, I own one of the lots on 7th Street. You know, most of you are familiar what all we've gone through to get this block. Of course, the last thing we wanted was another multi-family building in there. But, you know, it is what it is. And we love that brick building, and everybody's happy that they're remodeling. We just didn't expect that the little house next door was going to turn into another multi-family. We can't stop that, but what we would like for you guys to consider is, I think the more parking spaces you have there, the more cars, the more traffic. That's how we get to our house, through that alley, because we don't have a front entrance. So there's going to be a lot of traffic in there. And I think 18 spaces for, I don't know how many people, how many families they're planning on putting on the brick building. I think there's 5 or 6. And then how many more are they going to put in the little house that they're going to knock down and put another multifamily? So can we consider to put the minimum amount of parking spaces in that whole thing? You know, the homes that we're building in our block are very nice. You know, most of us are at the end, and we put in everything we have to make these houses. There's a very nice district. We have all of our designs are beautiful. So we're going to have 18 parking spots right there on our block. I don't want them, you know, nobody wants them, but if they have to do it, you know, do it. You know, those people don't live in our block. It's just investors that buy stuff and get people to move in, and we have to live with it. I'm concerned about the traffic to our block. You know, our home is two lots. It's their lot, and it's the Joneses, and then it's ours. So the traffic to our house, and I don't really want to see a parking lot. So if you could consider just how many parking spots do they really need? You know, do they need 18 to cut? Give them the minimum that they want. And the drawings that they gave us to all the neighbors, you know, they weren't really that specific. They were not quite what we needed to know. And if there's still going to be so many changes, if we could give Randy Floyd the opportunity, you know, she's one of the people that actually started all this movement on this particular block. She needs to see, you know, she couldn't see, and we like her opinion, you know, her opinions on her, she's very valid architect in Oklahoma City. If we could give her the opportunity to see the new drawings, and we can make it a little nicer and a little smaller, will be for the neighbors that we're going to actually live there and put all our investment there will be nice. So I think continue it for next time when they do their homework and make it a little nicer, more explain it a little better. But what about the fact that they really need 18 spaces? I mean, can somebody just go ahead and build a parking lot in a neighborhood?
Well, one of the things that we had discussed, and Randy, as you may know, did submit a letter to us, and we all.
I didn't see the letter.
Oh,
she told us she was going to.
She did, and one of her concerns was behind the lot of the house, 804, the house that's going to be demolished, if they not build parking behind that, on that lot until they know for a fact what's going to go on that lot. And so we discussed it, and this may have been just before you stepped in, but the applicant agreed not to put those parking spaces in behind 804, behind where the house is currently. So that would reduce the number of spaces.
So there's no rules on how many parking spots you can build in a neighborhood. I mean, it's just,
The,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you have 5 families going to live in the brick building, can they just go ahead and build 10 parking spots in a neighborhood just like that? Or what is, I mean, what?
There are minimum parking standards. This particular district is not subject to those minimums, so any parking they provide is above and beyond what they would be required to provide. There is no standard in the code that limits to a maximum the number of stalls they can build. And in the DTD1 district, which this is located, freestanding parking lots are permitted use. So, and I've done some calculations based on the number of units in the brick building with two bedrooms, that's 4 stalls, and with 6 one-bedrooms, that's 9 stalls. So that's a total of 13 that would be required just for the brick building alone. And when you take the 5 out from behind 804, which we've talked about doing today, that gives them the actually exact number of stalls for that brick building. And then the number of stalls they would need to support whatever new building they put on 804 would be determined at that time. But again, they're not required to provide any because they're exempt in the DTD1. But of course, to make their units marketable, they're going to want to provide as much parking as they can.
Brian, did you want to, or Jeff?
Yeah, and I think to at least clarify that statement, that 13 is if you were building outside of the downtown district, that is the minimum that would be required to support these 8 units. And so what the commission has asked is to reduce the number of parking from the 18 so that there's no parking behind 804, and it coincidentally matches up with, in essence, market. So.
I had a question. What was your address and how far in are you? I mean, you
I'm
need
on 708.
So you're the third house in on that
The
street?
third house, 715.
And you mentioned that you don't have access from 7th Street, so you have to go through this
Right.
alley to get
Everybody
to your...
in that block, from the corner all the way to Chartel, we all enter our homes from the alley.
Okay.
We don't have any.
Francis to Chartel pretty much has to come through the alley unless you have a 4-wheel drive to come from the street.
And the other, oh, I'm sorry, Betsy, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if that alley has been improved.
It's on the list to be improved.
Okay.
What I understand, current timing for the TIF improvements, and that's what's doing that. I'm guessing it's maybe 6-9 months from now when it is improved.
Can I ask the applicant a question about that real quick? When you do this parking back there, are you going to improve your...
Absolutely.
So
Doing
so
that.
what they're doing is going to make it better for you, it sounds like.
To my house.
That's where we'll go. But you'll have a nice road to drive right down there.
The other point I would make is that the apartments, and by the way, the apartment, I think the official apartment address is 802 Northwest 8th. If anyone wants to look it up, Randy mentioned she couldn't find approvals for it. If you look it up in the city system under 802 Northwest 8th, you can see the CA and administratively approved by Michael, et cetera. 802, as you well know, for the longest time was just, it was not a nice place.
I know, we were going to buy that one. But it's a beautiful building.
It's a beautiful building on the outside, but it takes, as you know, if you've ever been in there, a dedicated and someone willing to commit the resources to do what has to be done. So there is the parking issue. We're trying to mitigate that. there is going to be the improvement of the alley, and more importantly, there's going to be, I hope, the improvement of the entire area
Oh, yeah,
by
definitely.
the revitalization of that
We
building.
just we didn't know that they were going to put another multi-family building right next to it. And that's when everything that you just said about the beautiful building, then it goes, well, now they're going to cover it. It's not going to be by itself. So that's fine. There's nothing we can do, but don't put as many parking spots in there. That's all there's going to be on my side of the block. And if there's anything can be done, it's fine. That's what I need to say.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, call the question.
Did we actually get
No, we didn't get a second.
Did we get a full motion, though?
Yeah, we did get a full motion.
Okay.
It's just to continue everything except for the demolition.
Okay. Does that work for you? Okay.
Continue items 2 through 6 would be helpful, yeah.
Would be, okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
giving enough direction to the applicant so that when the applicant returns,
Yes,
they understand what exactly is going to be.
right.
Well,
So when we come back in April, it won't have anything to do with the demolition because that's already been approved. We'll just be talking about the site improvements and how those all lay out, and the landscaping and so on and so forth.
Okay, perfect. With the sorts of drawings and
Yes.
site plans and
Yes.
excellent. Okay, so motion by Brunstetter, seconded by Robison, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's continued. Thank you very much for your interest in your work. Okay, item 8A, administrative approval report. And Michael, you've done a good job outlining these. If there's anything more to report or flesh out here that you feel is necessary, please feel free. Otherwise, if you want to move on to 8B, comments from planning department staff, feel free to do
Yeah,
so.
there's nothing really significant there. A couple signs. I think the biggest thing on the list is item 2, which is the rise, and they did add some square footage and area to their parking lot and some additional parking stalls, but everything they're doing came under the threshold for the administrative review, so we approved that. Planning department staff comments. I have great news. Earlier today, I received the surveys from the Cottage District, Mr. Bleakley. I haven't even opened the box yet, and it is a pretty sizable box, so I will take some time to start looking those over and seeing what the issues are, and in combination with those comments and concerns, start looking at other aspects of our guidelines and regulations, and we'll be probably ramping up for a new look at our entire package for your guidelines later this year. So that's one item. Nothing new to report on the snow cone building. Code enforcement and court proceedings are continuing. They are, as I understand it, they've been fined twice already, and they just continue to, I guess, act as if they're willing to accept being fined at this point in time. So, and aside from that, I don't have any other items to report for the commission.
I'll give a quick update, comments from commission members. The Northwest 23rd parking study. Well, interestingly enough, there actually, we discovered that there is a large and focused study going on Northwest 23rd. It's related to the study Jeff was talking about. So OU IQC, Institute for Quality Communities, is studying the Plaza District parking. They're studying Northwest 23rd, and they're studying the Paseo for walkability and accessibility. There are three groups who are doing it. It's the Uptown 23rd Merchants Association, and then the IQC at OU, and then our own commercial district revitalization program is, so the three entities are kind of working together, and they had a kickoff meeting in March, and they're going to study. Let me tell you what they're going to study here because I have it. The contact person is Jennifer Gates with the Commercial District Revitalization Program, and specifically regarding the Uptown component of their study, They're going to focus on multimodal transportation and transit, infill development and rehabilitation, streetscape, parking, peripheral development and housing, and the relationship to the neighborhood. So they're going to be having focus groups, and they already have surveys out now. So it's a pretty full-fledged study. They're going to be done around the end of June, so should have a final report in July sometime. They said we could all have one, and that I invited someone from IQC to come and present to us if they want, given that all three of their areas are UDC areas. And so hopefully in July we'll arrange to have them come and present what they've discovered. And in the meantime, I've told the planning people, the planning commissioners with whom I've spoken, that we're just going to hold off, because I think there's no reason for us to get in there and gum up the works if these other three groups are working on it right now.
I do have one other item, if I can go back to 8B real quickly. We did also receive an application from TeamCo for the Gold Dome building, so that'll be on your agenda.
Oh, interesting.
Next month.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments from commissioners?
I have a couple.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just a blabbermouth. I do want to apologize. I misspoke. There are lots of fourplexes and multifamily buildings behind the stuff north of or east of Walker on 23rd Street, and I didn't register that. All I registered is the first two empty lots. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that I have, I'm going to do a plug for ULI. I've become the first commissioner that is a public member in ULI, just to see how it works. It's easy. It only costs $100. You can become a member of ULI. And ULI is a group that is going to give us some perspective on planning in Oklahoma City. And I think it's a great educational piece to, so you're included in any of the correspondence and all the notifications of various meetings or whatever. In addition to that, I just took the Congress of New Urbanism training, and it is really cool because what it does, and Michael did too, and Michael and I are both CNUAs, but what it does is it gives us a better perspective of what we're really trying to do here. So I think that it would be really wonderful for you guys to join ULI. And Teresa, at some point, is going to come and speak to us, right? Okay. But also, if you have an opportunity to take the next round of CNUA training, I would recommend that as well.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. The next meeting date we can read on the agenda. If there are no objections, we will consider ourselves adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you.